Hello everyone, and welcome to this menopause awareness session this morning. In the chat, you will see the Unite Wolf form. Wolf are kindly sponsoring this session this morning, and therefore please record your attendance in the form that you can see currently in the chat. We'd really appreciate that so that we can record the numbers for the Welsh Government. Excuse me. So while you do that, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So here we go. I think some of you are saying you don't have access to the chat. I think that's about to be rectified. Sorry about that. You should be able to see it very soon. So I don't know whether you can stop me throughout this session. Perhaps you can't. If you can't stop me because of the way that the chat is set, the presentation is set up, then please write in the chat and I'm happy to answer your questions at the end. So yeah, anything that you want to ask, if you can stop me, do. If you can't, please record it in the chat and I'll deal with it then at the end. So we'll have time at the end to answer questions and share information. It's the richer if you're prepared to share with other people who are on the session today. Okay, so I'm the founder of the menopause team. I started in 2019, really as a response to my own lack of awareness, and I could see this lack of awareness in the people around me. So yeah, I've been doing these types of presentations since 2019. I've put a photograph of myself there as I think I look. Shortly, there's a slide coming up where I look absolutely dreadful. So I'd like you to remember me as I think I look rather than how you're about to see me. So I wanted to start the session really with the context, and the context is joy. So I am proposing that you would be able to have a lot of joy in midlife. The route to that joy in midlife is to be able to manage the menopause. If you don't manage it, sorry, if you don't manage it and you let it manage you, then things can get a bit tricky. So I am hoping that this session this morning, you'll be able to pick up some tips and some signposts whereby then you will be able to begin to start managing your own menopause rather than just getting through life. So I think everybody should now have access to the chat. So if you can please fill out that Wolf form, that would be brilliant, and add in anything else that you'd like to discuss. So the context is joy, and the route to that joy is to manage the menopause and not let it manage you. So we're going to have a look at some of the figures involved, then what the menopause actually is, and then what we can all do in relation to the menopause. This is not just about women. We don't live and work in isolation, so we need men to understand too. And it's not age necessarily related. It's not just something that's happening to us in midlife. It's indirectly impacting on those people around us as well. So we'd like people to understand, regardless of age, regardless of gender. So in the UK, generally, we make up 51.6% of the population. In Wales, a little bit more, 52%. And at any one time, there are about 13 million menopausal women in the UK. So high numbers. We're also the fastest growing segment of the UK workforce. So about 1 in 6 is 50 plus. And if you think back into your family, maybe your grandmother, your mum, maybe they were working, but often they had to give up work when they had children, they had to give up work when they got married, maybe they were part-time. So we are present in the workforce, we're out in the world much more than any generation before us. And so we are taking our menopause out and about with us. And this is why we need to manage it. We are heading up single parent families. We are significantly contributing to double income families. The pension age has changed. So lots of things contribute to the fact that we need to be able to manage our menopause, to be able to then live our lives in the way that we wish to live them. So menopause itself, that hasn't traditionally been discussed in families. So we haven't had the opportunity in the privacy of our own homes to really get an understanding of what's going on. So it's been referred to perhaps in hushed terms as the change. So a change in hormone levels, but really we've had no explanation of that, both in our family setting or in academic environments. So estrogen is the principal hormone that impacts menopause. It's also about progesterone and testosterone. Women lose 50% of their testosterone. We need it, and so we need to think about then, how are we going to respond? So currently, in the context of testosterone, it's very difficult to get hold of it as a woman in the UK. So maybe you try and get it through your GP, but it's only licensed for men. It's perfectly possible to take testosterone licensed for men. It's just trying to work out the proportions. You won't grow a beard. So this needs to be then discussed with a GP. But GPs are currently reluctant to prescribe it. You can get it much more easily privately, but then it's very expensive. So it's about £150 a tube, and perhaps you need about 3 tubes a year. So financially, it's not possible for a lot of women. So because of these hormones and the changes, somewhere between 60 and 90% of women experience notable effects. 20% of women have severe symptoms. So if you think back to that 13 million that I wrote on the earlier slide, you can see 20% is a significant amount. So this has been discussed by Dr. Louise Newson, and Dr. Louise Newson is somebody that I recommend and signpost you to. So if you can go to her website, it's called Balance, or you might consider downloading the Balance app onto your phone. She deals with evidence-based information. So this will be then very helpful in terms of understanding what's happening and maybe some of the solutions that are out there. So part of your journey to managing your menopause. So if we think about when, for most people, it's a midlife experience. So somewhere between the ages of 45 and 55. But that's not the whole story. 1 in every 100 women experiences menopause before the age of 40. So there'll certainly be people in your network, whether it's your professional network or your personal network, who are experiencing menopause. The youngest person that I've ever spoken to, she was 14 when she experienced menopause. She was 27 when I spoke to her, and she'd had a really tricky time getting a diagnosis and then getting treatments. So we really need to support this group of people. Also, trans men, intersex, non-binary people, people who've had surgical interventions, cancer treatments, others on different hormonal journeys. can all experience early menopause. So, and it can be a real shock if they haven't done the research and they don't know what to expect. The youngest person I've spoken to in this context, somebody who was transitioning from female to male, they were 17 and they'd experienced menopause. So it's mainly women in midlife, but that's not the whole story. So this is a pictorial representation of what you might experience. And the green area is when you've got enough estrogen for you, unique to you. The red area is the first stage of menopause. Menopause itself is an umbrella term for the 3 stages. And the first stage is the disruptive stage. That's because our hormones are fluctuating. You can see there the red area, the hormones are up and down. So you might experience brain fog, memory loss, heightened stress, heightened anxiety. You might not want to drive like you used to. You certainly might not want to do motorway driving or night driving. So you could have 7 to 10 symptoms at any one time. They could be fluctuating. And I would say that to make things easier for you at this time, keep a diary, record your symptoms. So you can keep a paper diary, an electronic diary. The Balance app has got a symptoms tracker. Somehow make sure that you know exactly what's going on for you in terms of your symptoms so that you can speak to a GP objectively about what is happening. That can last 4 to 5 years. And that can be quite a tricky time if you're not managing the situation. Menopause itself, that's something that we understand retrospectively. When we haven't had a period for a year, then in consultation with a GP, we could say that we were menopausal. 2 years if you're under 40. So again, you're writing in your diary the frequency of periods, and on that basis, then you're able to look at or look back and see the length of time that has passed. You then move into post-menopause. Maybe you take some symptoms with you, but you can see it's flatlined in terms of hormones. You're not going to get those hormones back. Things could quieten down, but still you could have symptoms. So you're recording them hopefully in a diary, and you're consulting with a GP. And consulting with a GP also allows you to rule out perhaps other issues that could be occurring. For example, you might be low in iron, you could have thyroid challenges. Now, GPs themselves are currently part of the challenge. So a report was published in August of 2020 by the British Medical Association, and they concluded that GPs don't have the necessary knowledge of modern management interventions for the menopause. They don't understand the benefits and the risks. And this is because 41% of universities currently offer no mandatory training. So this is a huge amount of GPs qualifying and not understanding what's happening. Even those that have mandatory training, it could be 30 minutes, it could be a couple of hours, but it's not adequate. This is about to change. So the academic year 2024-25, then from that academic year, all GPs will have the necessary training. But still, there are a huge amount out there who are unaware. The other problem is the way that GPs engage with continuing professional development. Currently, menopause doesn't contribute to that in a meaningful way. There are not so many specialists, only 143, so there are waiting lists. So maybe there's a way of managing this situation And perhaps the first way is to ring the GP surgery, find out who is the specialist in that surgery for women in midlife and particularly menopause. And then when you have found that GP, see them. So some women, very lucky, first GP they see does understand the menopause and does then have the ability to offer solutions. Many women are on their 4th or their 5th GP. 7% of women are on their 10th GP, and it would have taken 3 years for the menopause to have been mentioned. So certainly trying to find the GP that does understand is important, and don't expect them all to understand. You can also have done your own research, take some of that with you. You can be taking your diary with you. So you're positioning yourself then to be able to have a two-way conversation so that they know that you understand and that you are hoping then that they understand. And if they don't, you give them the material that you have taken with you and ask for another appointment. Then see them again, maybe when they've had time to read the material. You could also take somebody with you to the appointment. Often in perimenopause, we're lacking confidence and we've got low mood. So having somebody with us at the appointment to advocate for us, to write things down for us, that can really help as well. So these are some of the symptoms that you could experience. So perhaps you could take a photograph of the screen, keep it on your phone, share it with your friends, keep referring to it. Look for symptoms that you are experiencing and record them. So you will see here the word dry mentioned a few times, and that's because estrogen is a lubricant. So when we don't have enough of it, then our body starts to dry up. So dry eyes, dry mouth, dry skin, vaginal dryness. Vaginal dryness is experienced by 80% of women. It's the easiest one to sort out. You go to the pharmacy, you can see your GP, but often women are too embarrassed. So again, in terms of managing the menopause, don't put up with this, seek some help. We also think that hot flushes are an indicator of menopause, but that's quite dangerous because only 44% of women will ever experience a hot flush. So don't wait for that to happen because you could be part of the rest of the group who will never experience a hot flush. The most likely symptom is brain fog, where you forget things. Dizziness, vertigo, all of these sorts of things can present themselves. And as I said, you could have 7 to 10 of these symptoms at any one time. Sleep is a really significant one. Sleep being the foundation to a good life. So somebody else that you might start to engage with is Dr. Michael Mosley. So he's got a program on BBC, you can pick it up on iPlayer as part of the Horizon series. He's got a program on sleep. He's also got a program or a series of programs about sleep on Radio 4 at the moment. So his name is Dr. Michael Mosley. Key him into the search engine of the Radio 4 program and you'll be able to pick up his series. So start to look for groups of symptoms. If you go with just one symptom to your GP, so for example, heart palpitations, then they'll just send you for an ECG. So menopause is easier to recognize if you can go with groups of symptoms. So electric shocks can become an issue. If you're a child of the 70s, you wore too much nylon, then you understand about electric and static shocks. So I had a lady attend this session recently, and she had called an electrician to her home because she was having so many electric shocks. And I mentioned her not to laugh at her, but to indicate to you that if you don't understand the symptoms, then you start to look for solutions in the wrong places. So the electrician was never going to sort out her menopause. Other things that can happen to you, for example, allergies. Allergies might appear during perimenopause in particular, or allergies that you currently experience, they might get a lot worse. And this is what happened to me. I've got a really mild cat allergy, and I also had a cat for 12 years, and all was fine. Then I started to look like this. I started to look like this really regularly over a 3-year period. It's really frightening not to know what you're going to look like when you wake up in the morning. When I am not running sessions like this about menopause, I'm a university lecturer. I didn't want to walk into classrooms looking like this. So I felt vulnerable, and I used to wear dark glasses a lot of the time. I saw lots of GPs. I saw several consultants. I looked on the Addysg UK website. None of them ever made the link between worsening allergies and perimenopause. In the end, after a significant amount of my own research, I realized the link myself. Why I'd like to have known more about this during that 3 years was that then I would have known it was going to end. When I was in the middle of this, I thought I was going to look like this regularly for the rest of my life. So we really do need to be aware of the symptoms. For me, this ended at menopause, and I haven't looked like this now for about 4 years. So there would have been comfort in knowing it was going to end. But likelihood is there were also treatments, which would have meant I need never have looked like this regularly for 3 years. So just be aware of the symptoms, start to record them, and start to then find that GP that can help you. Other symptoms, anxiety, rage, all of these can be quite a shock, heightened stress. So Karen sent me an email. She'd attended one of these sessions, and she was talking about her anxiety and how that translated then at home, where she didn't want her teenage son to be going out on his bike for long periods. She was worried. She was waiting for the police to knock on the door. The teenage son clearly wanted more independence. She wanted him to have less. And you can see where then this starts to cause family tension. So if you've got a teenager at home, then potentially they are having a lot of hormonal change, going through puberty, etc. But you are experiencing something similar with the hormonal change of menopause and perimenopause in particular. So teenagers definitely need to understand about the menopause so that they can understand your world as much as perhaps then you understand theirs, and not get to the point where you think their behaviour is outrageous and they think your behaviour is outrageous. So for more calm in a family context, teenagers certainly need to understand the menopause. Karen also talked about how it was playing out in her job, and the fact that because she was very anxious and very quick to rage, only interested in perfection, she was frightened of shouting at a student and ending up in a disciplinary situation, or even some kind of performance management situation. And her colleagues, she was worried about how she was coming across to her colleagues. She didn't want to engage with them like she used to. So this is why we need to understand menopause at work as well, because we don't leave it at home, we take it to work with us. So there might be other things going on in your life. We live in an aging population, and you might have responsibility for aging parents and relatives. You might have also experienced death in your family. Suicide in particular is at its highest for women during perimenopause. Divorce and separation is at its highest during perimenopause. But we might have also experienced death of a partner. We might be worried about our children, our workload, and the cost of living crisis. So all of these things are going on, and we're trying then to deal with menopause. So I'm not saying that managing your menopause will make these situations go away. It won't. But what it will do is allow you to manage these situations in a proportionate way. If you've got some of these things going on and you're menopausal, you're likely to feel overwhelmed by them. Whereas if you manage the menopause, if you have solutions to your symptoms, then that can really help you deal with these things in an appropriate way. So we are also what is called this sandwich generation, where we've potentially got young people at home, but we're also managing and influencing the lives of aging parents and relatives. And we're caught in the middle, trying to deal with both sides. So we are then in the middle of this generational sandwich. This list comes from the British Menopause Society. This is another place that I recommend that you go to get good quality evidence-based information. So if you look at the front screen of the British Menopause Society website, you'll see the right-hand side is the patient section. You could go there, you could find that great research. There's also a symptoms, a postcode tracker. So you can key in your postcode and up will come the nearest NHS and private specialists that are close to your home. And you can send them an email. So that's part of the charity side, but still a specialist will respond to you if you make a small donation. And that's another way of managing your own GP. If you send off an email to the British Menopause Society about your concerns and what do they recommend, then you'll get a message back from them, and you can take that then email message with you to see your GP. Your GP will respect the British Menopause Society. So that is another way of getting the solutions that you require, even when perhaps your GP isn't really up to speed in an educational sense. So self-care is very important at this time. It's important at all stages of our lives, but in midlife it's particularly important. And if you think of the week and morning, afternoon and evening times 7, so we've all got for the whole of our lives 21 sessions each week. So if you could take 3 of those sessions and then commit those to your self-care, that would be really positive, a minimum of 3. But lots of you on this session might think, I just haven't got that sort of time. So maybe you'll start this afternoon with just 10 minutes for your self-care. And then you can build that up over time. And during that time, you should be thinking about your nutrition. What are you taking on board to support your midlife experience? What will you have for lunch today? What did you have for supper yesterday evening? Also thinking about how do you feel after you have taken on board alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, sugar. And maybe it's not about giving those things up, but it's about changing when you take on board those things, or changing the amounts. And maybe even recording in your diary how you feel after, so that you can look back and you can start to see patterns. You could see from the list of symptoms that you could have joint pain, etc. Maybe you don't want to do the exercise that you used to do. So perhaps you buy some weights and you start to exercise at home. Or you do yoga and you do online yoga. So whatever it is that makes you feel as if you could commit to some exercise. Mindfulness. Maybe you're ruminating over things. Maybe you're finding it difficult to switch off. So perhaps you've learned some mindfulness techniques that could help quieten your mind. I already mentioned sleep, and I said that Dr. Michael Mosley was brilliant in this area and that he had a program on iPlayer, and he's got a program or series of programs about sleep currently on Radio 4. Thinking about your general health and starting to improve that. Committing to hobbies that you enjoy. Thinking about who's around you and who can help you. And then how often are you going outside? Will you have a walk at lunchtime today? Will you walk the weekend? So nature is restorative, so trying to spend some time out in nature. So this is an ongoing conversation. So as I said, maybe you can't commit to 3 sessions a week, but you can start to build up to that, starting from 10 minutes this afternoon and prioritizing your own self-care to ensure that you're living your best lived experience. So HR might be something that you could consider. I'm not suggesting you take it, but I am suggesting that you research it. And then you can make a decision, an informed, evidence-based decision about whether you should or should not take it. You can consult with your GP, you can take information with you to the GP, and then have a discussion about how it might benefit you. What is not advisable is to Google HRT or to read about it in newspapers and magazines, because they aren't evidence-based and you don't know what the agenda is of any of those areas. So if you're looking at the Balance website and the British Menopause Society, even New Scientist, they're dealing with evidence-based research. And then you can make a decision and either speak to your GP or even a specialist about, will this be a positive influence in your life? So some of the facts that we have currently about menopause are not great. Pre-pandemic, 45% of Welsh women found their symptoms difficult to deal with. So this figure came from the Fair Treatment of the Women of Wales. That's a health-focused website that you could access. We can get these figures right down if we can engage more women in understanding and more women in managing their menopause experience. 60% of Welsh women said the symptoms negatively affected their work. So we already said that women often are contributing either all or a significant amount to family life. So menopause making their job situations vulnerable is really worrying. 30% of women consider leaving work. In the UK, currently 1 in 10 actually leave. So very high figure. The grey area is the women who stay but reduce their hours. So again, if that's because of menopause, then we can do something about that. That need not be still happening. 1 in 5 women not seeking the promotions that they deserve. So menopause is affecting us from a financial perspective. It's an equality issue. All the time we see media comments about women not in top positions, women not in senior roles. Well, that's because potentially menopause is making a huge impact, and it's a negative impact. So it comes down to, what can we do about this? So generally, we can talk about it. And maybe now that I've said that, you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do that. It makes me feel embarrassed, vulnerable, ashamed. So I've put in there Brené Brown. Brené Brown does research in this area. She's an academic in America. And she would say that if you can overcome your shame, vulnerability, and embarrassment, then other people will see you as strong. So engage with some of her work. She's got great books, YouTube videos, she's got a TED talk, and try and get to the point where you feel, okay, I can overcome that shame and embarrassment. I can talk about this. Certainly research, find out more. And we need to have men who are knowledgeable. We don't live and work in isolation as women. So therefore, men need to understand what's happening for us too. And I've suggested some places that you could get help and support today, evidence-based help and support. There are other places out there as well, but it's just being very careful about where you get that information. Menopause has become a commercial space. Lots of people are trying to make money in this area. So really consider, do you need to buy a particular product? Don't just believe what it says on the packaging. You need to think about what research has gone into that. What's the gravitas of that product? So this is why I've suggested you start with the British Menopause Society and Dr. Louise Newson, so that you get the evidence-based research. In terms of work, if you've got a menopause policy, then absolutely read that. 37% of organisations have a policy in 2022. Promote a culture of care and the menopause awareness for all, make it a reality. We need to educate managers and line managers so that we're able to have good conversations with them about our menopause experience. There could be reasonable adjustments that will allow us to stay at work, maybe a different uniform or more of a uniform, or a change of desk, a change of start time. There could be lots of things that could help us stay at work. If you've got some kind of social media at work, then perhaps you could develop a menopause group on there and that you post quality information. Yammer is the professional equivalent of Facebook. Maybe you have that or you have something different. Attend a menopause cafe or even create a menopause cafe in your organisation. 25% of organisations currently do run some kind of menopause cafe or network. And that's a brilliant place for people just to sit down, have a cup of tea and discuss menopause. You could appoint a menopause champion, somebody who is the focal point for menopause in your organisation, somebody who has got lots of then resources available and can signpost. It's never about giving advice, but it is about signposting people so that they can then seek solutions. And try and put posters up, have books around the place, leaflets in communal areas. So both genders and any age, they can access menopause information. So Carolyn Harris, the MP for Swansea East, you might have seen Carolyn championing the menopause. So she's already got it on the curriculum in schools in Wales. She's trying to ensure that testosterone is available for women on the NHS. She's doing lots of work. She's made the House of Parliament a menopause-friendly employer. So maybe you could follow her on Twitter, Facebook, and you can really get then an understanding of what she's trying to achieve in the menopause arena. Similarly, the Countess of Wessex, through her charity, she's got the Workplace Pledge. And that allows then organisations to sign up to indicate that they are menopause friendly organisations. Maybe you could engage with some books, or you could signpost people to various books. There's lots out there, but these are some particularly interesting ones. So Kate Muir wrote this book during the pandemic. It's evidence-based and covers a really interesting amount of topics. You'll really become knowledgeable if you engage with this book. So whether you buy it amongst a group of friends or you borrow it from a library, it's really worth reading, or signposting others to read. Jenny Eclair, this isn't about evidence-based only in terms of herself. She's written this book about her own menopause experience. And that's great because it's a comfort book. You know, when you're going through this and you feel as if you're the only one, then reading Jenny's book could really help you. There's a whole chapter in there on cardigans. Who knew that the cardigan is the menopausal woman's fashion item of choice? There's a book for men about menopause. So women can clearly read that as well, but it's from a male perspective. I'd really advise getting hold of that book by Ruth Devlin, giving it to the men around you. And then the British Menopause Society have published a book. It's easy to read. I mentioned that GPs will respect the content, so you could photocopy pages, take that to your GP with you. So great books out there. But there are websites, and I mentioned Dr. Louise Newson's website, I mentioned the British Menopause Society website, and also and then a note of caution that when you go to other websites, be aware that they could be trying to sell you things. Great TV. Try and watch Davina's programs on Channel 4. They're still available on Catch Up. Watch them with family, friends, suggest them to work colleagues. Again, regardless of age, regardless of gender. Woman's Hour on radio, that's got great programs, well, often focusing on menopause. Podcasts, so 28-ish days later, that's absolutely brilliant because it covers the whole of the female menstruation and menopause experience. So that's certainly something to recommend to friends, but also to younger people. Apps, I mentioned that you could download Balance onto your phone. There's the Calmer that could help you sleep. And I've got a resource list that you could receive that's got lots of information on it. So back to the joy, really. It does take some work, and it does come down to research from a personal perspective, but it is definitely possible to manage the menopause. You don't need it to manage you. So if you can engage with some of the things that I have signposted, then that could help you. And just being aware that GPs haven't necessarily got the answers at the moment. So in terms of what I'd like you to take away from today, it is about self-care and really looking after yourself and prioritizing your own self-care. Keeping a diary, so tracking your symptoms, even tracking the food that you eat, how that makes you feel, and your general lifestyle. Lots of research, the stages, symptoms, again, diet, lifestyle, start to research all of this. In terms of diet, you could look at the Happy Menopause, that's both a podcast and a book. Find that GP, one that does understand modern management interventions, and really then engage with them to get the solution that you need. If you can't find the GP, ask to be referred to a specialist. And talk about it. Own it and forget embarrassment or vulnerability. As Brené Brown said, if you can talk about this, people will see you as strong. And then perhaps you take a challenge to go from this session today and talk to somebody who wasn't here, talk to them about menopause, regardless of their age or gender. Because even if they're a younger person in your team or in your friendship group, they might be worried about their mum or their aunt or their grandmother. So this is a conversation for everybody. So perhaps you've got some questions and thoughts or suggestions that you'd like to share. So I'll stop sharing, and hopefully then, yeah, I'll be able to see some questions in the chat. Or perhaps you'd raise a hand and speak. I can see Adele has written saying she wished she'd heard this 3 years ago, as she would have found it so helpful. Thank you for that, Adele. Maybe there's somebody on this session who's used the Balance app. Maybe you'd be prepared to talk about that, or something else that you've tried that's worked.
We have a hand up from David. I'll just enable your microphone, David.
Hi, David.
Hi, I just wondered if you could say a little more about the Menopause Cafe, that idea, and how that would work in a smaller organisation, perhaps.
Brilliant. Yeah. So
thank you.
There's actually a charity called the Menopause Cafe Charity that's headed up by Rachel Wise. So if you key that into Google, the Menopause Cafe Charity, then there's a whole website, and they explain exactly how they would like your cafe to run. And some people find that a bit restrictive, but it's nevertheless great to engage with that website. You might want to set up something slightly different, and so you might call it a menopause network or something else. And you could run it online, or you could run it in person, whereby perhaps people gather in a room at your workplace or in a community hub or community centre. So maybe once every month, once every 2 months, and you invite people to come along for some tea and cake and to talk about menopause. And that is of great comfort. Talking about it, it makes all the difference. So yeah, definitely go to the Menopause Cafe website, and then if that's too restrictive for you, set up a version of what they're suggesting.
Great, thank you very much.
And David, I'm pleased to see that you and some men are here today. Is there anything else that could be done, do you think, to encourage more men to attend, so that we can get a better understanding?
Yeah, I was very pleased to discover that my organisation, which is the Arts Council of Wales, is actually now in the 37% of organisations that has a menopause policy.
Brilliant, brilliant,
and
brilliant.
That was something that I'm chair of the union, and that was something the union branch did in our workplace about 2 years ago.
Oh, that's fantastic! Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
But we see menopause as a really important issue, because most of our staff are women, most of our members are women, members of the union are women, and we just think that work needs to be changed, really, to take into account the fact that women are increasingly working and continuing to work, and that needs to, that we need to have a different work environment to enable that.
Oh, that's so encouraging to hear. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming today.
We have a question from Adele.
Brilliant.
Hi, thank you, Joanne. It was not a question, actually. It was just to reiterate what you said I'd put in the chat about I wish I'd listened to something like this 3 years ago. and really encourage this, you know, to be open in the workplace.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. Thank you. Could we ask how you ultimately did go on to manage your experience?
I think I was probably at the time one of these ones that pushed it aside and just tried to get on with things. But now I've come out the other side of it and I'm postmenopausal. I'm now thinking all my symptoms, if I sort of listened to something like this and perhaps gone to my GP or my, you know, my practice nurse, I would have felt quite normal.
Yes.
Whereas at the time, I didn't feel quite normal.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. I can see Anne Clark has said that her GP offered HRT and she hasn't taken it. She's felt overwhelmed by menopausal symptoms because the GP said that taking HRT and basically delaying the menopause. Is that true? Well, no, it's not true really, because if you wanted to, really, in consultation with a GP and having reviews, you could take HRT for the rest of your life. And that's got health protections as well, you know, protection against things like osteoporosis. It's kind of wrong to say that you're delaying it, because if you remember back to the chart I showed you, you're never going to get the hormones back. So we live our lives postmenopausally. That's how it is for us. So by taking HRT, if that is indeed what you want to do, you're not necessarily delaying the symptoms. You're just giving your body back what it needs in order to be able to function correctly. If you stop taking it in 10 years' time, you might experience some symptoms just simply because, you haven't got the estrogen that you need. And then you might choose to manage it in a different way. So I would go to Dr. Louise Newson's website or download her podcast. And particularly on her podcast, she talks to people who've perhaps been taking HRT for maybe 40 years. So it's entirely up to you, but it's the word delay is wrong. We're in menopause. That's how it is for us. And it's how we choose to manage it, whether that be HRT or something else. That we're not going to get the hormones back. I don't know whether I was clear enough there, but can I ask where we can get specialist help? Is there somewhere in Newport? Happy to help. I had a great GP before, says Julie, but the one I have now is not so useful. Okay, so go to the British Menopause Society website, go to the patient section on the right-hand side of the screen, go in there and look for their postcode tracker, key in your postcode, and up will pop both the NHS then and the private specialists nearest to your home in Newport. I'm not medically qualified myself, and I hesitate to give out particular names and places. I don't want to be seen to be specifically recommending anywhere, but the British Menopause Society are to be trusted. And so if you do that, if you key in your postcode through the patient section, then you should be able to find the list of people that are closest to your home. I hope that's okay, Julie. And Tamara is saying there's a specialist in St. Joseph's Hospital in Newport, but they're private. So
Tamara, maybe it's Tamara. Yeah.
The British Menopause Society will give you the list of both NHS and Swansea. And Julie's based in Swansea, and she could find one in Newport. But I do believe there's a lady in Cardiff, and that lady is called Nadia Hickory-Ball. Nadia Hickory-Ball. But as I said, I'm not medically qualified, and I don't want to be seen to recommend anything. But there are a few around.
We have a question from Emma.
Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, I just want to tell you a little bit about my experience of the perimenopause,
Brilliant.
which I'm going through at the moment. I would recommend Davina's new book, Menopausing. It's absolutely amazing.
Brilliant.
I read it and I got very emotional reading it and thought, actually, these are the symptoms that I'm going through. So straight away booked an appointment with my GP, and I took along a list of all the symptoms I was having, which was
Excellent.
an A4 piece of paper, and went to my GP. She was amazing, and has prescribed me HRT, and I'm on the patches, which I've only been on it a week, so I haven't really noticed a massive difference, but it's I just wanted to come on and share my experience. And
Brilliant.
if you can get Davina's book, because it was life-changing for me. I also listened to Dr. Newson's podcast. I actually listened to one on the way to the office yesterday, and she's amazing as well. So, and I think I feel lucky and grateful actually that I'm actually going through the menopause now, and not 20 years ago.
Yes.
And I'm loud and proud, and I'll speak about it. And you know, and I've got a great team that I work with that also are supportive. So I'm very lucky.
Oh, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So yes, everybody, if you heard Emma there, it's Davina's book called Menopausing that came out, I think, earlier in October, so hot off the press. The other thing I would say to you, Emma, HRT comes in many forms, and you should give this form, the patches, 3 months. And then if you feel, well, it hasn't really done enough for me, you go back and you get a different type. So you get then maybe a spray or you get a gel. So don't stop at patches and think, oh, that didn't really give me what I wanted, and you know, I don't know what to do. Different types of HRT can suit different people better. But that is a brilliant story, and thank you very, very much for sharing it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
I can see Julie's written in the chat as well that she's read Davina's book and she went to the GP as a result and got some HRT. Yes, Julie Morgan, would you share about your HRT experience as well? And then I'll speak to somebody else, but Julie Morgan. No, yes, yeah, brilliant, Julie. You just need to come off mute.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, brilliant.
Lovely. So I agree with Emma. The Davina book was great for me. I got lots of information. I got the Balance app as well. So I took my Balance app with all the symptoms to my GP this week, and she was amazing. And she's also going through perimenopause. So I asked her advice, what she did, and she's told me what she did, and so I kind of took it on from her. So what she did was started with the gel. So she's given me gel and the progesterone tablets. And she said what she did was find how many pumps of the estrogen gel that brought her to a good place. And then once she knew how much estrogen she needed and progesterone, then she switched over to the patches and did it that way.
Right, brilliant. That's great. Thank you.
I'm going to try and probably do it that way, but I've only been on it for a week, so yeah, I can't really tell you much more than that.
And that's exactly what I did. I went to a female GP and I said to her, what do you do? What do you take? And she gave me then a prescription for what she takes, and I have taken that ever since. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing. We've also got Julie Colstick, and Julie, you've got your hand up and maybe you'd be prepared to share.
Yeah, well, I'm 40. So I just wanted to come on and just get an idea of what to expect. I haven't got any symptoms at the moment, but I want to kind of be pre-prepared. I'm part of Emma's team, and we do talk about it in conversation quite a lot. So it's nice to have other team members to talk to. But I just wanted to come on and obviously say thank you for the session. But also, if you had any contact details for yourself that you can share, so maybe we can go to our management and say that we've attended this session today, we'd very much like you to use this training for our team really across the board. So I don't know if that's something that we can ask for.
I just shared my screen. There are my contact details. I don't know whether you can screenshot that or photograph it.
Lovely. But that was the main thing, to say thank you and see if we could get those details from you.
Brilliant, thank you. It is brilliant to be able to talk like this and be able to share. And in terms of what you could expect, Julie, I think initially you might just start to feel maybe a bit more teary, a bit more forgetful. You're driving, perhaps you might not want to do so much night driving or motorway driving, a bit more stressed. You might do a presentation at work and not want to do it, or you in the supermarket and you see somebody and you think, oh God, I can't really face talking to them. These little things start to happen, and they creep up over time. Lots of people say they felt as if they had early onset dementia because of the memory loss and the brain fog. You don't need to put up with any of that at all. If you can do the research now, so that as soon as then these things start to appear, you just immediately engage with your management choice. So we've talked a lot on here about HRT, but there are other ways to manage it. I don't want to be seen to be just saying that HRT is the only answer. It's not. And some people use the Michael Mosley diet, the blood sugar diet, to manage their menopause. Other people use exercise. So it's brilliant that you're on here before you've become menopausal, because then you can start to do research about how you might manage it going forward, and that you're prepared. This is what we want to get to, I think, that we're not managing it from within the menopause, we're doing the research beforehand so that we know what we might want to engage with. So brilliant, thank you. I don't know whether anybody else would like to just quickly say anything before we end.
Jane, could we see your details again, please? I was writing them down and wasn't quick enough.
Sorry.
Thank you.
There. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope that you have all got something from this. And the main thing is to be proactive, do the research, and know that it's become a commercial space. So again, this is my own personal opinion. If you go into Boots today, you'll see shampoo for menopausal women, you'll see face creams, you'll see all sorts for menopausal women. And maybe buying some of those will make you feel good, but that's all it'll do really. They're not solutions. You're looking for evidence-based solutions that will help you. So try and be discerning about things that you buy, because people are trying to make a profit. And we don't want to be spending money unnecessarily. Pleasure, Tamara. And Anne can be the last one. Just my experience after lots of trial and error and research, taking magnesium made a significant difference. Brilliant, Anne. Thank you very much for that. So maybe that's something that other people on the session would start to research, what magnesium can do for you. You can take it in supplement form, or you can get hold of it as kind of in its kind of salty form, and you can put it in your bath, or you can soak your feet in it. So yeah, definitely research that. That's a really interesting one, and thank you. And that's why these sessions are important, because we can share these things and some of them can make a difference for us, and some of them won't, but it's just really nice to know about them. Brilliant, everyone. Thank you ever so much for coming, and yeah, do spread the word, and look forward to hearing from you. Take care. Bye bye.